This movie is both silly and awesome. Really brings the D&D world to alive. And I've come to the slow realization that Chris Pine is one of my favorite actors. He kills it in everything. Even when he's in awful movies, he's always the best part. Even if you've never rolled a 20-sided die, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is a fun-filled and wholly accessible fantasy adventure that leans into the spectacle and silliness of D campaigns. Sure, there are plenty of in-jokes and Easter eggs to delight hardcore role players, but they never come at the risk of losing newcomers. It overstays its welcome a bit, but this light-hearted fantasy adventure is worth seeing to the end.
What is it exactly that you bring to this?
I'm a planner. I make plans.
You've already made the plan, so
If the existing plan fails, I make a new plan.
you make plans that fail.
No,
He also plays the lute.
not relevant.
Warning: this sound was made by AI because there is not enough money for the voice commentator, but if the channel reaches 1,000 subscribers, there will be a voice commentator, so please subscribe to the channel. What's the story? This is John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein's first real big-budget film to actually hit production, reportedly in the $125 to $150 million range. Chris Pine plays Edgar Darvis, who's imprisoned, along with his right-hand warrior Hulva Kilgore, played by Michelle Rodriguez, after a robbery gone wrong. Once out of prison, they recruit their ally Simon, a so-so sorcerer, played by Justice Smith, and the Jurid Doric, played by Sophia Lillis, to pull off a massive heist, win back Edgin's daughter, and get revenge on their former teammate, Forge Fitzwilliam, now the lord of a wealthy kingdom called Neverwinter. Is it any good? I haven't played 1 second of Dungeons & Dragons in my entire life, and I worry that because it's Dungeons & Dragons branded, that there are going to be some people who think like, well, I'm not going to go see this movie because it's not for me and I'm not going to understand it. Let's put that to bed right now, because I did not feel excluded, or that there were things happening in this film that I didn't understand for 1 second. Now I'm sure that there are references that are embedded in the movie for people that play D&D to appreciate. But it's not something where if you don't know anything about Dungeons & Dragons that you're not going to understand what's going on. I would say this movie is no more exclusionary for people that don't know Dungeons & Dragons than the Lord of the Rings films were for people that didn't know J.R.R. Tolkien. Those movies were huge successes largely because they did what this movie did, which was to serve the fan base and put in the references, but also craft a story that non-fans can understand. Everyone falls into rhythm as unexpected teammates with a common goal, and contrasting personalities. Writers and directors John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein emphasize light-hearted entertainment that lifts Honor Among Thieves above cumbersome more as red wizards corrupt innocents, or the hero party must explore Underland searching for hidden artifacts with special abilities, the spectacular nature of lava lakes, or battlefields where fireballs rain immediately catches the eye. There's never a moment where all the fantasy world building becomes overwhelming, since we're only told what's necessary. Honor Among Thieves is a visual feast of fantasy landscapes, from luscious treetop villages where woodland folk reside to quaint towns that resemble architecture with favorable comparisons to the Shire and the Lord of the Rings. There's fantastic costume work that showcases dragon-human hybrids and furry tiger people, and a graveyard scene oozes with Sam Raimi-style dark humor. There's also plenty of digital effects that produce adorably chubby dragons and all kinds of fantasy races made from different species hybrids with scales, fur, or gills. I want to ask you about your opinion about the movie. Do you see it boring and silly, or beautiful, and how much your rate to the movie out of 10? The characters. Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez are delightful together. Every single scene with these two brings on the font. Pine's goofy leading man who constantly relies on the far more capable Rodriguez works in spades. It certainly helps that Mr. Rodriguez is so utterly convincing when kicking these big guys and monsters' asses. Her fight sequences are terrific, and Mr. Pine's comic relief during them is also a blast. These two are so good I'd love to see another film on their chemistry alone. In addition to Payone and Rodriguez, the remaining Dungeons & Dragons cast members are incredibly engaging. Hugh Grant really should play more villains like this, especially after his brilliant work in Paddington 2 and of course this film. The actor is charismatic in this type of role. Graham portrays the very definition of a smooth criminal with a little smug humor. I liked him a lot in this. In addition, the trio of talent that joins Ed Gein and Hulk are all delightful. Regé-Jean Page, goddamn is this guy charismatic. Justice Smith and Sophia Lillis all round out this really terrific cast, and they deal with each other and the fantastical world they're in a beautiful way. I really liked watching all of these guys. The magical element of DE is all here too. The creatures on screen all represent the magic beast that players worldwide should be very familiar with. It also helps that the effects are impressive enough, especially considering humorous element. It's hard to bring this kind of humor into a period adventure like this without risking being schlocky or overtly silly. Yet both Daly and Goldstein seem to understand the nature of Dungeons and Dragons.